Time to check in once again. State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy is joining us for a Tacky Talk on the last day of July, Tacky.
Yeah, happy end of first half of summer, I think is the way to put it.
Boy, that was quick. I'm still waiting to go on vacation.
Well, absolutely, you're right. I've not taken summer vacation yet. I did have a little reprieve in February, which was cut short because I had to come back to vote. People may not realize that I cannot vote remotely, and it's not like the voters see my "I'm on vacation" sign up. So obviously, you've talked to me here in the State House when, I remember budget week was like half dead, coughing up a lung. If somebody may remember me constantly losing my voice as I'm restraining my cough, talking to you all. But I mean, this is kind of one of the challenges of the job. Unless have an infectious disease or you're hospitalized, you can't vote remotely in the House. And you must show up for work. And this also applies to public hearings right now. House members are expected to actually show up. You cannot participate remotely, but you can observe the public hearing remotely the same way as the public can, of which the chair will know that you are at least observing the hearing remotely, if you're not in the room with us. So, I mean, in person is a real thing here. As you can see, again, I'm in the office actually. That's my
Yes, this is not AI generated. This is real.
Well, it could be AI generated. These eras, who knows anymore? I mean, there's so much recording of the both of us. You may be seeing QATV just, create their own product with the two of us. Point, we'll be out of a job.
Well, we can't make any money off it, so we're not going to bother.
So, I mean, so it's, again, I've been having meetings in the State House this week. We've had a session yesterday to address the what did we do yesterday? Yesterday we did a bill to require educational training with hotel motel workers regarding human trafficking. We did a bill on that yesterday. We also worked on a bill for God, my memory is terrible now.
There was a bill for retired teachers.
Oh, yes,
keep their benefits.
Yeah, we got a lot of emails from everyone in the state actually to allow some retired teachers who missed the Retirement Plus option to be able to buy back in. For those who are not a teacher, Retirement Plus is a special program that allows teachers to have an accelerated retirement schedule, provided that they pay the increased price out of your paycheck per month for that accelerated schedule. So that they would have an option to enter a separate system compared to basically almost everybody else in Group 1. But again, they would have to pay more sooner and faster than anybody else.
Okay, so, what does that get them?
That gets them about 5 years on an accelerated schedule.
Oh, okay.
But unlike other groups that do get out on an accelerated schedule, they do not have to pay extra.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, for example, Group 2, Group 4, which are predominantly public safety workers, they're on an accelerated schedule compared to Group 1, but they don't have to pay extra.
Yeah, I see. Okay. All right. So if they wanted, if it's at their choice though, right?
It is at their choice. If they choose not to participate, obviously they'll be in my category because I'm with the 99% of all the other public employees.
Right.
Regarding the schedule, the teachers can choose not to do the accelerated program, but we're going to give some folks a chance to participate again through this in the House. Obviously, both these bills have to be approved by the Senate, so that's still pending. We talked about the Chapter 90 bond bill that we did, a $1.2 billion bond bill for local bridge and road infrastructures, basically local aid for cities and towns with bridges and roads. I don't actually have the exact Quincy number, but it should be just under, I think it's just under I think it's under 3 million. I got to get the actual number.
All right.
But I believe it's under 3 million. I gotta get it.
Okay.
Confirm next.
That's higher than, because it's been under 2 million in years past. So.
Yeah, it's because we increased the amount from 200 million to $300 million contribution to cities and towns this cycle, reflecting the fact that we are expecting federal impacts on the local level. And since this is bonded money, the state will pick up the interest costs from the cities and towns. So again, I hear a lot of property taxes from folks and what can the state do about it. And one of the things we can do is, like in the state budget, is provide local aid, grants, direct assistance, earmarks, access to certain types of bonds and other things that the state can provide that may or may not help on your property taxes, depending on how the municipal government wants to address the issue. I mean, I can't tell the municipal government how to spend the money. All I can do is try to get as much resources back to the city the best I can and take some pressure off property taxpayers.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's money that the city doesn't have to spend on those projects.
That's correct. And we also created, we just kept adding more funding in the bond bill. Basically, it's all municipal regarding emergency road projects, certain types of shovel-ready projects, assistance on small bridges under 20 feet. This is obviously not just Quincy, this is statewide. And, Quincy is not unique problem regarding local road and bridge quality. This is a statewide issue at the municipal level. And obviously, you all know at the state level, it's pretty tough too. But the federal cuts at some point are going to hit on transportation, which affects both the state and the municipalities.
Yes.
Let's see. And also, we don't know if they're going to start withholding pre-approved grant monies from the previous administration. For example,
the Cape Cod bridges, right?
I was going to just say that the Bourne Bridge.
Well, that's the biggest nut that the state got, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was approved by the feds, and there's a distinct chance that he may just start yanking those prior approvals. Again, it's like a breach of contract. You made a promise to us and you don't follow through on your side. You guys all tell me that's a good or bad thing, right? It's a bad way to do business. So, this is why I keep saying it's becoming an unreliable partner, because your contracts and your commitments and your word is no good anymore.
Right. Which is, like you say, if you do business with a company like that, they're gonna fold pretty quickly.
Agreed. So this is kind of the waiting pattern we're sitting here at our level. And we talked about regarding the state budget. The governor vetoed, a few 120-ish plus million more. Maybe we have a unspent area about just under 900 million. I'm aware that the administration is trying to get more savings out of the secretariats on a hiring freeze and try to see if they can trim bits and pieces here and there everyone's budgets to see if it can get even more savings in preparation of having used said savings to backfill federal shortfall.
Right.
It is a real moving nut on our side here regarding what's going on. It's creating a lot of nervousness because people don't realize that government participation in the economy is actually an economic driver. And the Trump administration loved talking about how they reduced the federal workforce by 70,000 or more people, but that's 70,000 or more people that's no longer contributing to the economy because they're going to have to trim back their spending because they're going to be unemployed if they can't find a job quickly. If you have the unemployment benefits, as we saw during COVID, you don't have any money. You can't contribute to the economy in the same way, and you're finding yourself on government assistance, which we prefer you not to be on government assistance if you could. But those who are able to get some government assistance, will also put that money back in the economy. The SNAP program has a broad range of people getting a small amount, like $50 a month, to people with substantially more amounts of money. It can be very large or very small. But if you're a grocery store and we do have limits on what you can buy or cannot buy on SNAP programs, we prohibit you purchasing things like alcohol and other similar items. But that's going to have a ripple effect on local stores. If people can't pay for food, already can't pay for food now. So if you start to really just tighten the belt more, it's going to really impact local businesses. So I do understand that people think that the government is not a participant in the economy. That is not true. Every capital project we do creates local construction jobs, but ripple effect to all the retail and food services and suppliers in the geographic zone. The film industry, when they show up, and I went to New England Studios recently to do a tour to see how things were going, and they brought this latest project brought over $72 million in direct economic impact. The money was spent inside the state of Massachusetts on all the things you need to do in making a movie, whether you're bringing people or hiring local people, but you're always going to be using local services. So
you have to feed them, you have to house them, you have to move them around.
Yeah, and you guys know I've been working on the film tax credit to make it permanent for a decade plus before we finally get that done a couple of years back. So I mean, there is a legit participation of government that helps the economy create jobs, but most importantly, you have a job, you can move money in a commercial economy, and our economy is 70%, give or take, commercial service, meaning retail and service industry. We're not a manufacturing economy nationally, and Massachusetts most definitely is a commercial slash service-based economy.
Yeah. I've been speaking to a lot of the social service agencies, and they are quite concerned about how any federal cuts might impact them directly and also indirectly in terms of how their client base responds.
No, you're absolutely correct. We have the exact same concerns. I met with a group of students and faculty from four UMass institutes, former UMass, university community colleges in that system, regarding Asian American funding programs that was put in place in the Biden administration. It's actually relatively small dollars, about $800,000, but it looks like that will be 100% stripped out from that program. In the history of the United States, there's never been any investment in any kind of Asian American programming to assist students, but also provide some more educational at that level regarding Asian Americans in the United States, which we do have a history here of over 200 years, actually 300 if you could consider the colonial period. So I think people aren't aware of that. But it's a real concern, and the state can only do so much because we can't deficit spend, and we have to have a balanced budget. And you all know, just like you at home, once you dip into your emergency savings money, it isn't like it replenishes quickly.
Right. Yeah. What is the state's current emergency fund or surplus, if you will?
Under 9 billion, so it's
Okay.
like 8.9, give or take some change.
Okay.
Some of the money we used for that interest was to leverage federal grants. We authorized the governor to do that. So she's authorized to take not all of it, but a portion of that interest that was generated, because interest rates on short term is still very high, to leverage that against federal grants. So, think about it, guys. If, we have a deal with the feds on a federal grant and we already put up our 25%, money's there for you, saying, look, we got our cash, come through on your side, and they don't come through,
Then you're out that money, right?
Yeah, well, no, we still have the money, but yeah, we're out of the federal money.
Right.
Just wasted money that we've already set aside. It could have been collecting more interest.
Right. And the time it took to do that too.
Yeah. People hopefully will understand that this is not a simple process up here on procuring federal funds, federal grant programs. It is very engaged. It's time consuming, and we have to come up with our share. You don't have your share, you don't get the money. That's get it.
Yeah, and what has not been discussed really is what benefit that all this government savings is going to translate into in terms of federal tax dollars.
Well, that's a good question, right? I mean, I said before, one of the challenges of doing a tax cut of any kind is that if you just maintain the status quo by getting rid of a sunset, voters don't feel it. I mean, I'm just telling you guys the truth of the matter, right? Voters feel, and residents feel, and actually everyone only feels what actually sees a physical change regarding things. Even but it's got to be changed substantial enough that you notice it. So, for example, when the income tax rate was gradually reducing down from the days of 6.95, to 5.95, and then gradually reduced to 5% over the course of 20 years. Nobody really said anything, because since we did such a gradual decline over a long period of time of tax receipts from taxpayers, people acted like, oh, well, I'm still getting, I'm still getting messed up by the state government on taxes. Like, no, your actual tax rate's gone down. It's just that you need to actually be cognizant of what those impacts are. Same.
Yeah, if you're a CPA, you noticed. Other than that, you didn't.
Yeah, because it's such a small reduction over long periods.
Right. And it's a flat rate, right, in Massachusetts?
It is, but you actually saw like a 1% deduction in taxes over the course of essentially 20 years. It's just a slow decline. And then we also increase the standing deduction over time. If you take a standing deduction as opposed to a personally deduction. And people don't notice that either, because once it's actually in place, it becomes part of a regular practice. And then you don't ever thought about what was before. It's like, I remember back in the early 2010s, we had an instance where we actually increased the standing deduction because we actually overfilled the rainy day fund. And it wasn't the biggest standing deduction, but it was noticeable for a CPA. But, you all and me wasn't like, ooh, oh, wow, look at this, because like, it's not like you and I memorized the standing deduction, history for 20 years.
And over that same time period, most people's incomes increase. So that offsets it. So you really don't notice it.
Well, that's it too. If you're in a situation where wages that go up, not everyone did, by the way. We do know that in the 2008 period to 2015 period, those
Oh, yes.
nation and actual wage reduction, because I took 3 pay cuts. Actually, my pay is tied to the economy, people. So your
Yes.
median household income is tied to my salary. So very conscious of when I took a hit. Um, so yeah. So that's kind of how that works. And this is kind of an interesting PR problem when you say, I didn't reduce your taxes. I just made sure they were the same from 2000 and whatever, 2018, and went to 17,
17,
2017.
yeah.
And 8 years ago, and people are kind of like, it's been 8 years. I mean, were you expecting, you know,
You want cheering from the audience?
yeah, exactly. I just find it fascinating how states, particularly Republican states, you're going to try to spin the fact that you have now status quo,
Yeah,
right? And then it's also more complicated than that, right? I mean, there's other components in there that affects other industries that may not affect us personally. So it's going to be interesting because if the Feds keep pulling back, and like I said, they believe that in the Trump administration they reduced their contribution to the economy by over 5%. I heard that this morning. That's what I heard. I know that was my reaction too. I'm like, how does that work exactly? I mean, generally that is generally bad for the economy if you reduce federal government participation.
right.
And given how federal cuts are going on our side, there may be reduced state participation.
Yeah. Well, we just saw the Fed yesterday keep interest rates right where they are because that's one of their concerns.
Yeah, that's not surprising. I mean, I'm expecting a very calm unemployment number tomorrow. I've been talking about this spike that's not happening. I'm expecting somewhere between 4.1 and 4.3 again, percent unemployment. As I like to repeat over and over again, some folks do not take unemployment because they're off a job too short a period to want to take unemployment. They may not get unemployment because there's certain types of seasonal temporary workers. People may not apply because they're no longer in the workforce. They retire early. They may be the immigrant that's been deported. They can't take unemployment. So the unemployment figure, people should be very cognizant of. It's just the percentage of folks that are on government assistance. They don't want to take unemployment benefits. It does not reflect those who have decided to leave the workforce young or unable to collect for whatever number of reasons. And my gauge of always adding 2% is no longer applicable because it's so dynamic right now at the federal level regarding how they're dealing with workforce issues. So, I expect because of those other factors, I don't see a huge spike in unemployment, but two numbers that are outstanding at the macro level that people should be aware of is one, people are staying on unemployment longer. They've got unemployment, which is a bad sign. And secondly, on job creation, it appears that about 50% of new job creation is government and not private sector.
Interesting. Well, you would think it would be the other way around, given all the cuts from Doge, right?
Well, correct. I mean, well, government sector entirely, not just feds.
Okay.
So,
All
but
right.
I mean, feds are hiring, by the way, in certain areas because Doge cut those guys. That is actually true.
Yes.
That is not false. But all I'm saying is that it's a reflection of how the government, all government, contributes to the economy, and that that generally government is very stable. We don't hire a lot of people. It's a very stable rotation on the whole. But when you have government on the macro level, national level, looking to hire more, it's come to even of the private sector almost. It's actually a problem because generally a private sector should be super dominant on hiring, and because the federal, state, municipal, county governments around the country, do not have high rotation unless there's like a mass layoff or like everyone turns 65 at the same time or something.
Right. They have to replace all the teachers or something. Yeah.
Yeah, some just hapstance when you have just that birth date that just everyone's just in the same, 2 or 3 year zone.
Right.
Which does happen actually, the baby boomers, that actually does
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
The impact on our economy is going to be, very substantial because it's not job growth that should be happening through the private sector.
Can we talk a bit about the supplemental budget bill and notably the agreement for the bar advocates?
Yeah, we talked about the bar advocates a bit before. Honestly, I did not hear from any of the bar advocates until I saw the news in May about the work shortage stoppage and the pay issue on full disclosure. I don't do courthouses as an attorney, so I do not know what it's like to be a bar advocate. For those who are unaware, there is public defenders. Those actually salary employees at the CPCS, the Council of Public. I can't remember the rest of it, but you
I
know,
can't either, but
yeah,
it's the state agency that provides lawyers for defendants who can't afford them.
yeah, exactly. So they're about 20% are salary employees. These are the contracted employees out there. You've heard House and Senate leadership as well as the governor in the media the last few days about the situation, and the solution right now is to give them a $20 increase across the board on all services per hour in two parts. So $10 this fiscal cycle and $10 next fiscal cycle. The price tag we believe is approximately $40 million, and we'll see where we go from there. So the governor is not wrong. None of us heard from bar advocates back in January and December when we were starting the budgetary review process. I obviously was crash coursing this the last 3 or so weeks, trying to understand what's happening. And, I really don't have an answer beyond that. We'll try this in this supplemental budget, which is just paying bills, by the way. It's not like it's really true a supplemental, we're just paying bills. And we'll see where this takes us. I don't know what's going to happen next. Did it go back to work? Did it not go back to work? I have no idea.
Right. Yeah. I saw the speaker, there was a comment on it briefly, and it was, he offered an interesting insight that it's really like dealing with individual contractors, because there's no union, there's no one group you're negotiating with. It's individuals.
Well, it's really complicated because everyone's at a different circumstance, and
Right.
you don't really have like a formal association. And even then, we're talking about a lot of attorneys, and they're not all the same situation. I mean, you can talk to someone that works this, they will know better than me, but I would presume that you got situations where you got someone's a solo practitioner running their own little business. And you got some people perhaps in a partnership or a mid-sized firm, or maybe, maybe 5, 10 attorneys. And they all tend to be very close to the courthouse, as you may be aware. If you drive near Quincy District Court, you're going to find the local attorneys that are right next door. And they're in the district court literally all the time. And, they get assigned cases by the judge while they're there. So, some are probably very complex and some are probably fairly simple.
Right.
But if you can't afford an attorney, by constitution, you have right to attorney, which the government will provide. And it doesn't matter if it's like a shoplifting case of, a minor misdemeanor, or, you have a situation where you're drunk and disorderly, right? There's no, you don't know what you're going to get when you go to a courthouse. And some days may be super busy and some days may be a little slower. It's not like people committing criminal offenses move in a steady pattern. So,
Right.
I wish I could have better insight of how that works in terms of being a bar advocate, but I really don't. I just getting the crash course of what's going on.
Yeah. I think, did the bill also include some funding for, this one interested me, home health care?
We're basically doing a lot of bill paying right now.
Oh,
There's a lot of backfilling. There was a lot of question mark given the federal situation, but these are all literally bill pays at this point. People realize that.
So it's nothing new. Okay.
It's nothing new. People should realize that we're like everybody else. Sometimes you're a little bit off the mark on the original budget because of unexpected costs. Like, it's like the electric bill. We have that problem too, right? Try to anticipate what our electric bill cost is, so we bake it into all the agency budgets. But if you have a monster spike, your choice is to try to find savings someplace else, or you have to pay the electric.
Right. Yeah. And then try and find savings somewhere else.
Yeah, and we're a balanced budget state, so that's part of it as well. We do not go into the rainy day account because you can't pay electric bill.
Oh, no. I mean, that's truly for a rainy day like COVID.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's got to be a real crisis, which depending on the federal situation may qualify. I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet.
That'll be interesting, yes, to see what happens down the road. When do you think we'll know, Tacky?
Probably once we get to the fiscal cycle ending at the federal government level, which is October.
Okay.
Their fiscal cycle, I believe, is is it November 1st? I'm trying to remember.
Sounds right.
Yeah, so most businesses and government runs on a calendar year, January 1st, or they run in the mid-calendar year, meaning June 1st. So I'm sorry, June 1st municipalities would do that. State governments would generally start in July 1st as a fiscal year. Feds are a little curious because they're in October. But certain federally funded not-for-profits will have their fiscal year follow the federal fiscal cycle.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Just to keep the funding flowing. Yeah.
Yeah, keep it in sync.
Yeah.
Your budget follows the Fed budget. So I think once you get to that point, plus all the rescissions they've done, which will all come full hit, I think it'll start to shake out as
Yeah.
we're closer and closer to October.
Okay. We'll have to see what happens. Tomorrow is the self-imposed tariff deadline by the federal government. So we'll see how many quote unquote deals are reached.
Well, I mean, a deal's a deal until it's actually inked, right? And the other government, depending on how the government structure is set up, has to approve it. So some places need parliament or the legislative body to approve tariff deals. Some do not. And yeah, give them a lot of credit. They have deals in principle. Key word, deals in principle. We don't know the details of what it is. And, what's exempted from the tariffs, right? I mean, certain things will be exempt, certain things will not be.
Right.
That's what people have this misconception is that it's like a blanket, like a sales tax. It isn't. It's a sales tax on targeted items, which will be put on, and largely that's negotiated after the announcement of the fact that they have quote unquote a deal, and it could still fall apart depending on the other side's maybe not liking to ink the final version.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, obviously, they took care of one of our biggest trading partners, which is the EU. People don't realize if you combine the EU and the United States, it's over 44% of global GDP. That's how much the Europeans are collectively at 27, countries together, matter to the world economy. It's a big deal. And if you've been to Europe, you know anything about Europe, they're not all equal countries. Every country is different regarding their economies and how they work. And don't be surprised if a few of those countries, particularly Germany and France, are looking probably for a couple of side deals, specifically targeted to their industries. But the EU bloc still has to prove this deal. Just because the EU president says we have a deal, you still have to get it past the EU legislative function to see what happens. So, I mean, that's assuring. The Japanese government, set it up and they protected their car industry, which was their primary goal. And they basically gave, $550 billion to basically protect their car industry, which upset the big three in the United States that happened. But, that's what happened. And then Korea came through with another 15% tariff deal as well. Again, targeted towards very specific areas. And he has a really minor countries. I mean, I'm sorry, but Philippines is not a big U.S. trade partner. And Vietnam is not going to take a lot of imports. It's not a wealthy country. So, I mean, they have the 20 to 40% tariff depending on circumstances, but they're big clothing manufacturers. So your clothing and your shoes are going to, see an increase because of the 20, 40% depending on what we're talking about a product. But you got big countries like India, who is not rapidly coming to the table. Brazil is getting hit again, and now they've sanctioned judges that in the Bolsonaro case down there.
Oh yeah, I was reading about that. Yes,
mean,
it's very bizarre. Yeah,
it's very bizarre. You mean you're sanctioning judges on a corrupt president who has, you caught red-handed. There wasn't like some kind of like mysterious thing here, and it was. Brazil actually is one of those countries that have independent investigation authority outside of the executive branch. You'd be surprised how many of these countries around the world have these third-party, non-executive branch, quasi-independent. You can call them rogue if you want, but they're outside the influence of other government to investigate. Korea is another one. South Korea impeached a president using a government investigatory agency, which is outside the purview of the other three branches of government, specifically to invest corruption in government.
Yeah.
So, and not surprising, those are very, very corrupt governments in the past, which is why they have these third-party groups that are sheltered from government to investigate themselves.
Sure.
Creates public confidence, right? So, and you still got the Russia situation and the so-called secondary tariffs, which the president has moved up to less than 12 days, cut a deal with Ukraine or else. And I think Putin's going to just snub your nose at us and just say, whatever, and just ignore us. And then you said the China situation, which, is not making massive progress. I mean, I think anytime you hear the words, constructive conversation, it means there's no progress. And I'm sure they may have yet another deal in principle like they did 3 months ago, but there was actually no deal yet, right? They announced we have some guidelines or some general understanding. Both sides will probably parrot the same response.
Yeah.
To tell people, well, we have no deal, but we've not stopped talking conversation. So
Probably another reason
we'll
why
see.
the Fed probably took a wait and see approach this week,
Well, there's 200 plus some odd countries that are going to get hit with tariffs tomorrow.
Yeah.
The vast majority are not high income countries. Many of them are trade deficit countries because they sell one or two, perhaps, very specific materials the U.S. wants. But people are not exactly, benefiting, the riches of diamond mining, right? It's not like Madagascar is, doing the riches of vanilla sales. I mean,
right.
There are people that participate, that in those countries probably make more than some of the other average folks, but far, far, far from, the 85-ish thousand per capita that we have in the United States. But, we're lightning years ahead in terms of per capita compared to these other countries. And get ready for your coffee to go up, perhaps because you have Brazil and the Latin American countries that provide coffee. You like your coffee, stockpile now. This could be a shocker coming. And certain produce, fresh produce, particularly fruits, could be spiking as well. And I say could be. I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, we got essentially a small number, but major economies. I mean, they're all top 10 economies. So it isn't like they're small deals. But you got a whole lot of your little countries that are scratching their head because they know their country can't afford anything. And some countries like India is very protective of agriculture because they know that if the U.S. floods their market with cheap, I know it sounds funny saying that, with cheap agricultural goods or other cheap goods, it destroys the domestic market, which is still a burgeoning, whatever, of evolving, growing economy.
Yes.
So if you're like in India, which is making real headway in growing your economy, and then it's flooded by, the U.S. that gets in, undercuts because we have just bigger capacity, it destroys the local business. And that's why a place like India is holding pat, and India is cutting a lot of deals outside of the U.S. right now to try to secure itself a brace of impact against, the U.S. tariffs.
Right. Switch gears a little bit, talk about, I read about the Cannabis Control Commission coming up with some new regulations allowing public consumption within cannabis bars, essentially.
Yeah, this has actually been talked about for a long time. It's actually in the enabling statute to allow them to do cannabis cafes.
Okay.
I don't claim to know a lot about those things. I've never been in one. I've never participated in one. Been told in other countries this is a thing. It's kind of like consuming alcohol on premise, same kind of principle, but
like a bar room.
Yeah, like a cigar bar type scenario. Again, I don't understand why people think it's not a health risk if you're inhaling ash in your lungs. Just saying. But it's also, not a crime to be in possession of cannabis on the street. I mean, it's decriminalized. So I kind of get it, but I kind of don't at the same time. I mean, it's like having designated smoking restaurant service areas. I mean, I personally don't like the smell of cannabis, and many of us gotten used to non-smoking indoors. I won't go in there. I mean, because I'm like everybody else that got used to non-smoking indoors. I don't want to expose myself, and I don't visit cigar bars, so it's not like I go do that. So I get it, but I kind of don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the question I had was, will local cities and towns have the authority to have their own regulations about them?
Well, they have the standard business regulations, but they can't, prohibit it short of the local business regulations that they apply anyway.
Okay.
It's like the whole zoning thing, right? The cannabis shops they try to zone them out of the ability to be anywhere. And that's how you got the medical marijuana shop up in Granite Links.
Right.
In that little, area where you first go in, you turn right, there's like
Yep.
the Dan Quirk used car section. And then there's like a little building there. That was like the first medical marijuana shop. But I mean, since then, as you've seen, they've been popping up, all through the city, mostly on storefronts and main roads.
Mhm.
We'll see, competition. We'll see. We talked about the price structure issues in the past and how it's not as competitive as the black market, and all kinds of saturation of customer base. So we'll see how they all survive or don't survive. But I just I get it, but I also don't get it, as you can hear. And we'll see who actually wants to do it too, because it's not necessarily just smoking indoors. I mean, you have to build a food service type scenario, which has its own infrastructure costs associated with it.
Interesting. Okay, so it can't just be a current dispensary switching over to this consumption space.
Well, and the dispensary doesn't want to do that anyway. Dispensaries are very secure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that stuff is like Fort Knox level of protection.
Yeah.
Dispensary. I mean, good luck trying to break into one, much less get to product.
I have not heard of one incident that has happened. No.
Yeah, they all have like those like legit bank safes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that's not going to happen. So I'm not sure how you want to build a cafe. If you're going to supply product, you have to pay for that security as a dispensary.
Right.
Then, do people bring their own and then you just run a coffee shop? I have no idea.
Right. Well, that's another question I had too, is where are they going to get it from? Do they buy it there, or they just bring it with them?
Yeah, I have no idea. I really don't.
BYOP, bring your own pot. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm again, I'm not a participant. I like being in non-smoking areas. And again, I don't know why anybody would submit themselves to that environment if they don't like being in a non-smoking environment.
Right, right. So typically August, the legislature takes a break. Is that going to happen this year?
It looks like it will. We had this conversation was quite engaged the last 2 weeks internally about whether or not we are, as my colleagues and other government affairs people are all asking questions since we got started late, and the calendar is set up in a manner where the committees are in rush getting bills out of committee in 60 days. I definitely will be polling again. I have to give the committee members a heads up that we'll be at least doing a poll pursuant to House rules within 60 days of getting stuff out. I'm trying to avoid extension orders as much as possible, and that's what I'm trying to avoid doing. So, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I'm trying to get as much off my plate as quickly as possible. And given that it's kind of tricky on longer projects because of the shorter deadlines, I got to really pick and choose stuff I need to research longer, which means there's a distinct possibility stuff I don't have time to figure out, it's going to go to study over because I just don't have the time to sort it out in this accelerated schedule. And I work on some complicated stuff in committee, and I do like to keep the committee informed. So, I have great people, working for me, but it's less about the importance. Well, let me frame it this way. It's less about how I feel about it. It's whether or not I have time to get it done.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Yeah, it's all about time. Time management is critical. Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys know this job is engaging. I mean, I do work very hard to try to get many local events as possible. But I mean, I met the ambassador of Nepal. I had an ambassador of Korean. I'm sorry, the South Korean. Who was it? Oh no, Japanese consul general visit. I had school kids come visit last Monday. I had the YMCA had kids come in. Then I had a church group come in. I mean, so we had a lot of different groups come in that I say hi to and spend some time with them and answer questions and so forth.
Yeah, that's important to those groups. I'm sure, it's they don't do that every day. That's a one-time thing for them.
Yeah, and every time I get a chance to do it, I can't always promise I can do it, but I
Right.
try to do it as much as I can. So people often perceive this job as kind of like either sitting in your office or you're only running around, to district stuff. But there's a lot of other meetings, with foreign governments, as well as meeting local constituents, or some kids actually aren't all local constituents, they're all regional because of like a summer camp scenario where
Sure.
India kids with other kids. And I don't mind. I mean, it's great to host folks. Plus, trying to get the committee work done. Plus, I do have legislation of my own I gotta keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, dealing with the committee members themselves, every committee member has an ask or concern. And then, reading all the testimony, then, having the staff collect it, and got to figure out where we are in certain redraft bills, because the redrafting bills I have to okay before we send out.
Right.
And, obviously constituent services. I mean, I've been informed that we have 10 unemployment cases before us that are still pending a response from Department of Unemployment Assistance, DUA.
Oh, I read something about folks waiting for their benefits longer than expected. Yeah.
Yeah, and I gotta make sure, the staff and I coordinate, make sure we get to the right briefings too. I can't do every briefing, obviously, so we have to coordinate among ourselves, like who's going to what. And then we have to fill each other in on what we heard. We take notes of each other, what's going on. It's turned in among the staff, including myself. So, I mean, this job is much more involved in so many different ways beyond just going into the chamber and voting.
Speaking of the district, there's lots happening. We've got August Moon right in August. There's some big concerts in Quincy this weekend, so there's tons going on.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to the city again on putting together incredible Quincy 400 events, a lot of free concerts, a lot of stuff happening on the Hancock Adams Park in front of City Hall. Obviously, August Moon Festival is a mainstay on the South Shore. It is the largest festival in August, in particular on the South Shore. Great job with Quincy Resources, the Parks Department, the Police Department, the Quincy Public Schools, all the volunteers, the sponsors. I mean, it's a major event, and I'll be there. As long as I can withstand the heat, I'll stay as long as I can withstand the heat, handing out paper fans and greeting people. Yeah, it's getting harder. Once you get a certain age, folks, I can't realize you don't realize how old you get until you do enough of these, and the heat really does get to you.
You just need a bigger hat, Tacky. Maybe a sombrero.
Yeah, it's always like, where did the time go, right? I'm like, wow, this seemed easier, 10 years ago. And you're like, yeah, you're older now. And
Yes, I have news. It doesn't get any better. It only
Thanks,
gets
Joe.
worse.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I really needed to get the preview of the future.
Yes, that's right.
But, yeah.
And sales tax holidays in August.
Yep, August 9 and 10. I'll be having a birthday that weekend.
Oh, no kidding. Speaking of getting older.
Speaking of getting older, and I actually have a wedding to attend as well. I mean, not like you need to know my private life, but I actually have a wedding to attend. Actually, I have I have a cousin getting married in October too, so I got some family obligations I got to schedule into my life to fit it all in. And this, I think, part, like I said very early on, it's not like the public knows my vacation or sick days. I mean, if I'm sick and it's really bad, I mean, I've been trying not to get other people sick. But at the same time, though, things happen with family life, things happen. It just happens. You got to deal with it. And then, of course, you got things you can plan for regarding other family issues. It's like when I was out at events one night and I was running late because I had dinner with friends, and I was like, I do have friends. And it's like, because I was seeing a lot of stuff, and it's kind of like, yeah, I have friends. I do have to see my friends sometimes. They think I'm a ghost.
Tacky, only in spirit, right?
Yes. And as we talked about getting older, but it's true, as we get a little older, we appreciate time a little better. And sadly, I lost some other old friends. I actually have a funeral go tomorrow morning. That's how you know you have time losses, when people are no longer with you.
That's true. That's very true. I have to cut a little short today, but this is always a good opportunity to let folks know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, we're in room 42 at the State House. Obviously, we're going to be a very quiet schedule in the month of August, where things are going. But yeah, room 42, 617-722-20.
2370.
God, I'm having all kinds of brain freeze. 617-722-2370. That is the office number. If you need help with a tour or need some information, please give us a call. tacky.chan@mahouse.gov, tackey.chan@mahouse.gov. Happy to email constituent service first. As I pointed out, we're getting a lot of unemployment cases, abnormally high for my experience right now. We're at State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook, and we've migrated to Instagram, which I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I mean, it's linked to Facebook, so I'm sure you guys can figure it out. I've actually not seen my own Instagram.
It's a bunch of pictures, I think. That's about it.
Yeah, the staff handles that. The reason I don't do my own social media is, one, I've been prohibited because I can't spell. And second, it's a rabbit hole for people like me. I start going to the rabbit hole of social media. I will never come back out again. It's not good mental health for personal reasons. And then obviously with tackichin.org, which is the resource page, amendmentlegislature.gov, very highly recommend. Again, always people create their own account on there and track legislation and watch us without me. You guys can do this without me. And of course, with QA TV, every week or 2 weeks. I know we're both gonna be taking some time off soon. But try to get together as often as can. If you got special questions, reach out to Joe, and Joe will make the decision whether or not he wants to incorporate it into his show.
Yes, there's a very good chance that I will. I have not heard of any yet, so I haven't had to decide.
Yeah, greatly encouraged. You got a burning question, ask Joe, and because as much as we call it tacky talk, it's really Joe's show.
I did think of one other question before we wrap up, because you started to talk about social media. What about this plan to cell phone ban in public schools?
I've been talking to some folks. I don't have children, so I don't have personal experience in the matter. But talking to some parents and talking to some teachers, and it's people like the idea, because it's hard to focus when you have cell phones out. Obviously, school security is a concern because sadly, cell phones is how you call for help. God forbid something happens in a school. So there's a delicate balance here where we have a new form of emergency response device while trying to keep people from being distracted in education. Those of us who own it, remember, you brought your Walkman, you weren't going to be able to wear it.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, those of us who are old enough. I mean, the teachers frowned on your Walkmans in class. So, it's not exactly an identical example, but it's not like we haven't prohibited devices that are distractive in schools. And cell phones are not the same, but I do understand that. But I mean, it's the same principle. The only crinkle again is that these days, sadly, very sadly, they're a very important emergency response device.
Yeah. It still needs to be worked out, and obviously there'll be exceptions for emergencies like that. Like you say, if hopefully never needed.
I hope so too,
Yeah.
because technology is getting better, AI is getting better too, and God forbid, there's something happens in a school in Massachusetts, and you got to do an emergency response to students. You can bounce them to the text message as a priority and emergency response right away, for example.
Right.
And we're heading that direction. I mean, that's what's going to eventually happen is, God forbid, something happens in a school and everyone's phones, buzz saying that, this is the emergency situation, proceed to do XYZ things.
Right.
I hate to say things like that because it's so different from both our childhoods of how we grew up.
It very much is. So yeah, it's a stark reality of the day and the time that we live in, right? We are gonna catch up with you hopefully next week, Jackie.
Yeah, hopefully get to next week. Next week is National Conference State Legislators. This weekend is the Asian Caucus Party, so we can follow up on how that went.
Oh, watch for Tacky's pictures on Instagram from that.
I think there will be a few.
Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Joe.